Okay, so this lecture for 3.1, social engineering. We'll start off, there's a ton of key definitions in here. So social engineering is an attack involving human interaction. We'll get into all the different ones. Phishing, that footprinting is similar to stalking, but social engineering context means following, trying to figure out who your target is going to be. Pretexting, fictitious scenario to persuade someone to perform an action or give information. Compared to elicitation, which is a technique to extract information target without arousing suspicion. Preloading is influencing the target's thoughts, opinions, emotions before something happens. Smishing is doing phishing through SMS. It's also called vishing. We'll get into this, vishing, V-I-S. And spam is the one that they asked a question on. It's similar to spam, but it's malicious links sent to target over instant messaging. You can understand spam stands for solicitation, promotion, advertising material. Used to have a lot of spam, and now it's kind of targeted, Hoax is a type of malicious email with some type of urgent alarm message. Hacktivist, it just talks a little bit about this, political motives. Script kiddies, we've talked about before, same as white hackers, black hackers, gray hackers, so these are all terms we've been introduced before. Cyber criminal is a hacker willing to take more risk because the payoff's higher. Cyber criminals are often associated with large organized crime syndicates, such as mafias. And we'll get into nation states. We'll talk a little bit about this. Actual government employees, different governments employ. Moral obligation. Attacker uses moral obligation to exploit target's willingness to be helpful and assist them out of a sense of responsibility. Innate human trust, and this is one of the big things, often exploit natural tendency to trust others. We trust people that looks like us, speak like us. Other ones they've used, especially on older people, is threatening. They'll threaten to intimidate. I got one with an email that they had hacked me. They actually sent my login and my password to an account. And they'd been watching me through my webcam and wanted $1,000 in Bitcoin. It was rather humorous. Had some fun with the guy, sending messages back and forth. Offering something for little to nothing. This comes into the greed size. Attacker promise huge rewards. Targets won't do a very small favor. Trivial piece of information, which is not that trivial. Ignorance. Target's not educated. Social engineering tactics, and that's one of the biggest things. This prevention. We hear about attacks all the time that we as usually computer users think stupid, but if somebody's new to computers. The research phase is, we're going to see this a big phase of this, just like development phase, research phase where about the organization, who you're going to target. This is where the footprinting comes in, or which is stalking, cyber stalking, and to gain information, including going through the organizational website, social media. So much of us put all our stuff out there on Facebook and that, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And so it comes along the lines with pretexting. So the research may provide information for pretext, which use a fictitious scenario to persuade someone to perform an authorized action, server's names, login information. Usually requires attacker to perform research to create a believable scenario. So then the development phase involves two parts: selecting individual targets within the organization being attacked and form a relationship with the select targets. Usually attackers select people who not only have access to information or object they desire, but also show signs of being frustrated or overconfident, arrogant. Some easy way to extract information through conversation, emails, even Facebook. The relationship build targets trust. Exploitation, that's where attackers take advantage of the relationship with the target, use the target to extract information, access, username, attack to other personnel, providing social credibility. Attacker insert a USB flash drive with malicious payload in an organization computer. I talked about Stuxnet, and that was one of the ways that they did that was through the USB drives and opening. So even though these centrifuges were not hooked to the internet, that was the amazing thing about it, that this little program, any USB, it would go through and look for the computers that were hooked into these centrifuges, these devices, and find them. It was pretty amazing how they did that through IP addressing and MAC addressing. Shoulder surfing, that's where somebody looks over your shoulders, same as eavesdropping, people listening, private conversation. USB and keyloggers on site, we'll talk about how stealing data through that. Spam and spam, same thing, just spam happens to be through the spam is similar, but it uses the link sent target instant messaging instead of email. So spam's through your email. Hoaxes come through all the time. You can see usually tell. We'll see on most of these emails, even the first lab, it's the spelling, incorrect spelling in that. Insider, and that's one of the big things. Organizations all the time, it's said that any organization should be attacked because there's definitely employees that are disgruntled, and they want to make money. In fact, there's just a case the other day where a Harvard professor, a chemical professor, was working with China, and yeah, it was kind of a big thing. Hacker, generally speaking, is any threat actor, and that's a term that we're going to use a lot. Threat actor, that's someone who has knowledge to bypass security or get vulnerability and access information. Like I said, white hat hackers do it to find the holes in that, not for bad, where black hat hackers are doing that. Unlike what we talked about, hacktivists with political motives, script kiddies. We talked about some of these other cyber criminals definitely do this for the financial gain. So, nation states, these are getting bigger and bigger all the time. We're seeing more and more attacks on our country through, from the governments of China. Iran has its own, all these countries now have IT. In fact, we talked about the Cold War back in the 80s. This has become a big thing. In fact, it's said that almost every country in the United States has some kind of vulnerability that's been exploited by some nation state. Authority and fear. This is often a technique used to be somebody that's, I've had this one used on me where a boss, I got an email supposedly from my boss needing something right away. It was quite a bit of information about the college and our logins and that, and they thought I was in the IT department, which was kind of funny because they talked to me like I was the director of IT. They didn't realize I was an instructor there, so it's kind of what gave them away. Even the email spoofed very good. And then social proof is the means the attacker uses social pressure to convince the target it's okay to share or do something. In this case, the attacker might say everybody's doing it, or it's okay, or might call you, hey, this HR department, I need this information. Scarcity appeals to target's greed. Some short supply will not be available. We're seeing this right now with this coronavirus. There's all these fake things coming out, testing, and this things to cure it, and it's amazing how much money the guy just got busted in Florida, and I think he made a little over $3 million less than a month off this, selling this stuff that wasn't even real. Likability works well because humans tend to do more with people that they like, and opposed to the person they don't like. So if somebody likes you, you can get them pretty much to do anything. Urgency, sense of urgency, we see this all the time. In fact, if you can go to any online hotel, it's kind of amazing how you go in these hotels and be like, last 2 rooms at this price, and you'll find out they have 30, 40 different rooms, but they always do that. Common ground, shared interest, opportunistic, targeted. These are all kind of complements, all kind of follow the same thing. Target attacks is much more dangerous because target attacks is extremely methodical. It's often carried out by multiple entities that have essential resources. Target attacks always use common, or unknown exploits. The hackers do great lengths to cover their tracks. These can take months to go in. Misinformation, attackers might make a statement with wrong details, hoping that you'll fix it, give accurate details. What they're trying to do is just confirm the information. Same with feigning ignorance. It might make wrong statements, knowing something about the subject, then hopefully you target will only correct it. Most of these hackers, if they get you on the phone or anything, they're good listeners. They want to really talk you into, it's just like selling something. You really want to. Pretexting, preloading. These are 2 terms that come up on the test. Pretexting is doing research and information, gathering to create convincing identity, stories, scenarios. So that's what you call pretexting, where preloading is used to set up a target by influencing the target's thoughts, opinions, emotions. Same way with impersonation. Interview versus interrogation. It goes in talking about how you go through this, learn how to extract information from them, like setting up when you first meet with somebody, you never put yourself between them and the door, you don't want them to feel trapped. Environment, the hacker chooses for conducting interview and interrogation, essentially setting the mood. Location, it's not overly noisy, goes into stress-free, we'll talk about this. Observation. Spear phishing, this attacker gets information about the victim, such as online bank. The attacker sends a phishing email to the victim, appears to be from the bank. I got one of these from Banner Bank that I had, Baker Boyer, that I had an overage problem with my account. The funny thing about it is I did not have an account with Baker Boyer. When I contacted them, they had hundreds of these hit wall to wall. This was 2 years ago. Whaling is where we go after a senior executive or high-profile victim. Like I said, vishing is just like phishing, but instead of email, attackers are using voice over IP. And that's where the SMS phishing, where they use tense text messages, urgent topics, trick victims, and take immediate actions. Farming involves attacker execute malicious program targets computers so that any URL traffic, we'll get in this, called host redirect, host file changing, so privy to the user sensitive data like IDs, passwords. This is part of DNS poisoning. So anyway, so we get into this, social engineering, like I said, attackers go from low hanging fruit And that's humans. I mean, through email, social media, internet, trends, criminal groups, it's all pretty easy because attack involves humans. It's very hard to protect your data and assets against social engineering because people will sometimes just ignorant, especially older people on computers. They just haven't educated themselves. One of the first things in any company is to make sure we educate. We had an email come through our school a few years ago. It's causing major damage. They sent out a message, whatever you do, don't open this email. And with that said, 3 people went ahead and still opened it just to see what it'd do, not realizing it took down our whole email system and just kept re-corrupting us. When we talk about this, there's manipulation motivation. So there's that moral obligation that exploits the victim willingness to be helpful and assist them out of sense of responsibility. It's leveraging moral obligation. A lot of these, Africa, I won the lottery and I can't claim the money and I need help getting this. You send me $50, I'll share it with you. That's part of that trust. Attackers trying to, naturally tends to be trustful. We talked about threats. When an attacker intimidates the victim by promising a negative consequence, they don't comply. This is going on in a lot of cybersecurity. We see this now with encrypting data. And there's programs out there that will, encrypt the whole hard drive on a computer. And a lot of companies got hit with this. And they'll first send you a deal, it's $500. We've had it hit us. Same with greed. Promise some reward if you send big money. And just like I said, ignorance is one of the biggest problems, educating deal. So we look at, sign here, no tailgating. Each person must have their Apple ID. That's where somebody's going to walk through a door, somebody uses their badge, somebody follows through the door with them. Amazon. It was amazing when I went into the Amazon data center just how much they've got what's called dead mans. And these are areas where you have to go into one door, into a room by yourself before you can go through the next door, and no 2 people can go through at the same time. It takes forever to get in or get out. And if you've ever been out the penitentiary, the prison's kind of the same way where you're going through one locked gate into another locked gate to get into another room. There's 3 steps in social engineering. When we talk about social engineering, it's working with people. The first thing we're going to do is do the research, information gathering, establish a relationship, rapport, then exploitation, execution. So the 3 steps, research, development, and exploitation is the way we start out. In the research phase, when attacker starts gathering information about the company organizational attack. So, we do some observations, going to the website, dumpster diving, all kinds of ways, tricks to get to this. And the development phase has 2 parts, and that's where they select individual targets or form relationships. So we'll see, there's targets, opportunities, and there's actual individual targets that we can select. So forming this relationships, that's part of the development. And so in this one, they target the person, decide, okay, this is who we're going to do. And then 3rd phase, the exploitation phase, that's when the attacker takes advantage of the relationship with the victim, use the victim, extract information, accomplish this, disclose password, username, provide social proof, insert a malicious payload. They might send a file, that there's a lot of different ways, open infected attachments, expose trade secrets, performing pretexting. And like I said, pretexting is using a fictitious scenario to shade someone to perform an action or give out information not authorized to share. And that can be as simple as just a scenario, sending them a scenario, extract the information. And most of these are very good about leaving nothing behind when they're done. So if the exploitation is successful, the only thing left to do is wrap things up without raising suspicion. So most attackers tie up loose ends while erasing digital footprints, ensuring no items or information get left behind. A well-planned smooth X strategy, the attacker's goal in their final act in the exploitation phase. One of the best ones I heard was one of the warriors had his Twitter account. He had a 3-letter Twitter account. It was pretty. And so when the hackers got in there, he was trying to figure out, how'd they do this? And so he started a rapport with them, talking back and forth. And it was pretty simple. What they'd happened to do is get a hold of his iPhone account. They loaded a credit card onto the iPhone account, and so it was a stolen credit card, and then they called up the iPhone company and said, hey, I don't remember my login, my deal, but I have this credit card. It's loaded on the account. Gave the credit card number, and they ended up giving his name and password out to the iPhone. Once they got the iPhone password, they were able to lock down all his accounts. And so, that's where we come in, the shoulder surfing, eavesdropping. These are both situations. Some of these subjects, usually they're not this blatant, where they're just looking right over or sitting right outside the door. USB and keyloggers, these USBs are called risky devices because a lot of them most companies, the very secure companies, will lock down the USB where you can't even use USB because they, have no access controls on the USB. Somebody plugs them in, and that's where keyloggers, same way. The keylogger USB that can plug in and allow someone to capture usernames and password. We had an incident. I was called in at the prison. One of the inmates got a hold of a USB and had information on that. about different prisoners and why they were in. It caused some serious riots and fights at the prison. Talked about spam and spam, the difference, and so with spam, the attacker embeds a compromised URL in the spam email or banner ads and entices users to click on them. And then spam's pretty much the same thing, but the link is sent targeted over instant messaging instead of email. We're starting to see more on that through text messaging and instant messaging. Hoaxes is designed to scare and intimidate users and think they've contracted some type of virus. I don't know how many people have had contact with me. Normally, email says something like you've contracted Trojan horse, or you have this virus, includes the number you can call or click here. I've been called quite a few people. One guy, when he logged in, they actually set up remote desktop, took over his computer. What they were doing is fishing through the computer looking for a visa. My niece had this where she went to a site, said you had a virus on there. What they did is install the virus, and she ended up putting 6 different antiviruses and wiped out her whole computer operating system. Unfortunately, I had all the pictures of her kids and everything. It took me months to get the information off that hard drive or what I could salvage because the antivirus just tore it up. Yeah, if you think you have a virus, McAfee house calls, or you want to go to one of those sites, make sure to check it, a legit site. And if you do have a virus, last thing you want to do is install antivirus. You want to go remove it yourself. Talk about types of attacks. We'll talk about insiders are often one of the most dangerous types of threats. And actors, often the most overlooked. Here this shows employees pretty supposedly upset, I guess, by the picture. When we say insider, we could be talking about a customer, a janitor, security guard, but most of the time we're talking about an employee. Employees pose one of the biggest threats to any organization. And so employees, unlike hackers and script kiddies, remember the term hackers is kind of a broad, generic term applied to a lot of different categories of threat agents. And threat agent's a better term, so we look at that. But generally speaking, a hacker's any threat agent who uses their technology to bypass security, exploit a vulnerability, and gain access to protected information. The subcategory of hackers called script kiddies, there's a bunch of these different subcategories like cybercriminals. They have some unique traits and different from, the average hacker. Cybercriminals are way more higher level. Script kiddies aren't hackers per se in the traditional sense as their name implies. They're just sort of kids of the hacking world. They use applications or scripts written by much more talented people to attack systems and compromise vulnerabilities in devices. Nation states is one of the biggest attacks we're seeing, the most sophisticated attack techniques of all the attackers. We have NSA, the National Security Association. They often develop completely new application virus in order to carry out an attack. A lot of people wonder why in 9/11, the Twin Towers, what happened. The NSA was in there. The biggest server that we had for national security was inside one of the buildings, Tower 1. So they have a lot of resources and money at their disposal. If a nation state sets its crosshairs on any organization, they're going to infiltrate it no matter what kind of security has been implemented. And that's why it's so important to kind of recognize what attack looks like and what abnormal network or behavior looks like to you before you ever start. These are very sophisticated techniques. They have a lot of resources. Social engineering motivation. Talk about the motivation behind this. Just as there's different social engineering techniques and attacks, there's different types of motivation techniques. One of the very effective motivators is authority. And that relies on the power to get the victim to comply without question. So the attacker pretends to be a superior high enough that the victim will comply with the request. An email, another type of social proof. This means the attacker uses social pressure to convince the victim it's okay to share or do something that. And then there's scarcity, and that type appeals to the victim's greed. If something is short supply or was well out of soon, the victim's more likely to fall for it. Likability is another social engineering motivation. It works well because humans have a strong tendency to be, please a person they like, and they like it, they want to try to do it. When we look at the motives, attributes, attack characteristics, not all attackers are the same. They all have different motives. And they have different attributes and attack characteristics. They employ different techniques to get what they want from their targets. One of them is opportunity attacks. And so the first thing you need to be aware of the difference between opportunity attack and a targeted attack. So we start talking about, looking at the less dangerous of the two. Opportunistic attack. With opportunistic attack, the attacker is almost always just trying to make money as fast as possible with a lot of minimal effort. Least amount of effort they can put in because they're hiding their tracks and the process is very time consuming. This type of attack usually won't bother. They simply want to get in, grab the goods, and that's what's called a smash and grab. or what they call the automated. Automated typically involves scanning a wide range of systems for known vulnerabilities. A common example is ransomware. An attacker will gain access to a system, plant a virus, encrypts all the user data, and demand payment for decrypting the data. This is an automated attack that's become huge. So, your data has been encrypted, and this message comes up with the email, and they want usually, to pay them Bitcoin so much. We look at target attack, unlike opportunistic attack. Target, on the other hand, is much more dangerous. Target attack is extremely methodical, often carried out by multiple attendees, and they really have substantial resources. These attacks' main goal is to do damage. For example, leak sensitive information or destroy important data. So they use, unknown exploits. Like I talked about with Stuxnet, there was 4 zero-day vulnerabilities in that one. Just amazing. All the time, I think there's only been 7. We talked about elicitation as a technique used to extract information from target without arousing suspicion. Attackers use different tactics to do this, to make the target comfortable, willing to share information. They're really trying no suspicion, So feign ignorance when I make a wrong statement. Feigning ignorance is just another elicitation technique that's really useful, similar to what we just discussed about making a wrong statement, but instead of giving lots of exaggerated specific details. So, this technique involves making a wrong statement and then admitting to not knowing much about the subject and having somebody correct you. And people want to show just how much they know. Most of these guys are good listeners. So one of the best methods for listening is be the good listener. This may even seem very basic, but it's incredibly effective. People are willing to share more when they feel safe and cared for and connect to the listener. Attacker may approach a victim and carefully listen to what they have to say and validate their feelings, even share similar experiences are real or fabricated. This happens a lot with disgruntled employees, and that's what they usually try to target, especially nation states when they're trying to espionage and that. Like I said, pretexting, preloading, impersonation, these are all kind of close. So pretexting, so let's, all these techniques mentioned above are far more involved. So pretext, preload, impersonation, all different, but they're kind of hard to remember. Let's start with pretext, the use of fictitious scenarios. So persuade someone to perform an action or share information they're really not authorized to give out. So pretexting is doing research and information gathering to create a convincing identity and story and scenario tailored to specific targets. I think the one in the question they talked about is the guy figures out a gal has a dog. And so he goes up and starts a conversation about the dog. Preloading is influencing the target's thoughts or opinions, emotions before something happens. And then impersonation is just pretending to be trustworthy, approaching the target to ask them for sensitive information or convince them to grant access. Interview and interrogation. When investigators interview and interrogate suspects and witness, they use several elements such as environment, tone of voice, helps put the other person at ease. And in the interview phase, the attacker lets the target do the talking while the attacker mostly listens. This way, the attacker has a chance to learn more about the target and how to extract information. The environment, they talk about that. You need to set the mood, choose for conducting the interview. Essential, the location should not be noisy or overcrowded. Privacy is key to helping the target feel comfortable, confiding. Like I said before, you want a seat arrangement. It's also important. So they should be 4 to 4.5 feet apart and have straight but comfortable back. The attacker shouldn't sit between the target and the door, so the target never feels trapped or anything. Good lighting, that kind of stuff. Phishing. So one of the most successful social engineering methods is just called phishing tactic. And this one, a social engineer masquerades a trustworthy entity in electronic communication. It might send out a mass email that looks like it came from your bank. I got one from PayPal one time, but instead of the L, it was an I on the end. It was paypi.com. But you didn't know it. If you didn't look at it, it looked like it came right from PayPal and the site and everything. And what they want to do is log in, reset my account. Something was wrong with the account or whatever. Same with Amazon, eBay, all these, they're even government sites. Attackers even copy graphics and, from the authentic site. They just take a copy of the legitimate website, so it looks very real. So here's one from PayPal. New message looks like it's from PayPal, and this, subject, we believe we have money given to us. The goal is really to trick the recipient into revealing their username, trying to get them to click on a site, log in, bank account or number, credit card, or some other sensitive information. Usually they'll say something, we have reason to believe, we have your money. They buy into that greed a lot, so they'll try to give you a piece of information about you so it even looks more legit. Three terms here: spear phishing, whaling, vishing. So spear phishing is just gather specific information. Attackers gather information about the victim, like online banks they use. Then they send phishing emails that appear to be from that specific bank. Like I said, whaling is when you go after senior executive, high profile. Vishing is just like phishing, but instead of an email, they're using voice over IP, phone call to get system information. So it's the term of voice and phishing. SMS phishing. They said it's a text message, usually as urgent topic, immediate action needed, usually has a malware link in there, and they'll always have fake phone number to extract information from them. Farming is another attack to look out for. Involves the attacker executing malicious programs on the target's computer so that when the users enter any URL, it redirects traffic. You can go in the host file. We'll talk about this a little bit. A malicious website. So the attacker is sometimes called phishing without a lure, because farming attack can be performed two ways. Let's first talk about DNS Cache Poisoning. DNS Cache Poisoning, so when the user enters the URL, DNS server sends user to a fake website. So they, did the DNS Cache Poisoning. The attacker launched attack on the chosen DNS server. So, DNS, domain name services, redirect you to the IP address. Well, what they do is they give a bad DNS site to a wrong IP address, the fake website. And then they can target, the DNS server redirects the user to this fake IP and the fake website controlled by attacker. Another trick I've used to change is, like I said, the host file. And so we talk about that. Going in and changing the host file and changing the IP address in the host file and redirects them. Many people post their entire lives right on Facebook, so there isn't a lot of work for people to do. Pictures, friendships, interests, hobbies, work, abundance of information makes it easy for attacker to piece together clues about it. Click this information. Best one I had pulled, this must have been 6-7 years ago. I got an email from a good friend up in Sandpoint, Idaho. She was overseas and she got robbed, and so she needed money for the hotel and wanted me to wire money to Western Union. She sent me information only I would know. And right before I went to send it, for some reason, I decided to call her, and just make sure I had everything right. And she, what are you talking about? And it was amazing what they'd been doing was somehow had hacked her Facebook account and watched our conversation. And they must have watched for a couple of years because they had information, or went back through and read our post back and forth because they had information from back when we were in high school as kids. So it was pretty elaborate, the amount of work they went into it. I think it was like $500 they wanted wired through Western Union. It wasn't a great amount. I was willing to help a friend out. And luckily, I called her just before I sent it. In the lab, you're going to go do this lab 3110. And what you do is you have to identify the social engineering, delete the websites. And they're pretty easy to figure out. Some of them are really easy. The Microsoft Windows Update Center is a phishing email. The online banking one. The Grandma Jacqueline, I love that one because, she's forwarding this email hoax or whatever, and you'll tell it's attachment. In fact, Grandma Jacqueline's getting hacked a lot because she has 2 in there that you have to do on that lab. So that's pretty much it. Let's go into the questions here. Look at 3.1111, 12 questions here. So start this exam. I'm going to make this a little bigger. Don't forget about Control+, Control-, especially when you do the labs and that going back and forth. So it talks first on social engineers, master manipulators, which the following are tactics they might use. So in this case, it's the moral obligation, ignorance, and threatening. Remember, we talked about social engineers, meeting with people, talking to people. So question 2, which of the following best describes a script kiddie? Well, that's somebody that's going to run scripts, so he uses a script. They definitely don't have the talent to write the programs themselves. More important is make sure you know a hacktivist is a hacker whose main purpose is to draw attention to their political views. We've already talked about white hat, the cyber criminal. Any attack involving human interaction of some kind referred to, and this is social engineering. So anytime we're using humans, phishing, all this stuff falls under the social engineering. Using fictitious scenario to persuade someone to perform an action, perform authorized shared. This is what we call pretexting. So this is pretexting, as we mentioned before, is fictitious scenario to persuade someone to give you authorized. Footprinting, don't forget, is the similar stalking, but in social engineering context. Preloading is influence the thoughts, opinions, emotions, and impersonations, pretty much what it sounds like, just pretending to be somebody else. Ron's a hacker, wants to get access to prestigious law firm. He's been watching June, administrative assistant law firms, having lunch food court corner. This one where he knows that June has a dog, The casual walks up by starting a conversation about dogs, which phase social engineering process. So this is a development phase. He's just now starting. I'm really throwing here. Yeah, I'm sure it's development phase he's in. The exploitation phase is when it takes advantage of a relationship with victims. They don't have one yet. Elicitation of technique to extract information without arousing suspicion. So that's why I was kind of paused there, because it could have fell into this elicitation phase if we had more information. But really, it's just in the development phase. Your instant messaging coworker, you get a malicious link. Which type of social engineering? So this is a text. So not spam through an email. This is what we call spam, since it's through a text message. Brandon's helping Fred with his computer needs. He needs Fred to enter his username, password, system. Fred enters using Brandon's watching it. Brandon decides so Fred is a good idea to let anyone watch. So he's talking about over-the-shoulder surfing. One thing they don't talk about in here, it used to have one, it's called man in the middle, and that's where people would intercept emails in between and forward them on, and I'm sure we will talk about it later on. Just like blue snarfing and a few other ones that will come up. But anyway, so this is called shoulder surfing, when somebody's looking over shoulder, watching as you enter password in it. Question 8, which one best describes an inside attacker? So that's an unintentional threat actor. This is the most common that employees, we talked about that, and really figure out attacker with lots of resources, money, nation state, cyber criminal. The agent who uses technical knowledge to bypass security. So this would be an unintentional threat actor. He's common. So, janitor, anybody in there. Compliments, misinformation, offending, ignorance, being a good listener, tactics for social engineering. This is what we call elicitation. So this being a good listener, you're trying to elicit information from them using different techniques to elicit information from somebody. And these are just different ways of going about doing this. Preloading, like I talked about, influence somebody's thoughts. Interrogation, talks to the person, listens. You get a call from one of your best customers that asks about your company's employees, teams, and managers. What should you do? So you definitely don't want to give them the information. So not providing information for the call to help desk. Should not provide information except your manager's name and number. Send them to the help desk. They should have the information. They know who to help, what to do about that. So every employee in the company should be taught that somebody calls and claims to be someone that needs information. You should always forward it to the help desk where they're trained in this. Question 11, Jason at home, attempting to access a website for music. When he goes to the website, it has a simple format in his name, email, phone number. This is not the music store website. Sure, the website's been hacked. So they definitely used a DNS cache poisoning. They're sending him his IP address instead of to the actual website for the music store. And then the last one here, attack that targets senior executives, high profile. That's whaling when we go after big, high profile targets. So anyway, I did pretty good on that one. That is it for lecture 1. There's a lot of terms in there. So good luck with that.